What if the deadliest war in human history never happened? Imagine a world where World War II was avoided, no cities reduced to rubble, 70 million lives spared. On the surface, it sounds like a dream. But history is never that simple. Without World War II, entire nations would have followed very different paths. The Nazi regime may never have risen to such brutal power if Germany hadn't been broken by the Treaty of Versailles. Would the Third Reich have quietly expanded its influence across Europe unchecked? Now consider technology. World War II drove rapid innovation. Radar, jet engines, nuclear power, even the foundations of computers. Without that desperate race for survival, many of these breakthroughs might have taken decades longer. The space race, the internet, even modern medicine could have been delayed, reshaping the 20th century completely. And what about global politics? Without WWII, the Cold War might never have happened. No nuclear arms race between the US and the Soviet Union. But also, no United Nations, no NATO, and perhaps no rapid spread of democracy. Could the world have been more peaceful or far more unstable without those global alliances? Then there's the darkest question of all. Without the Holocaust, would the world have ever fully confronted the dangers of hatred, fascism, and genocide? Would human rights and international law have advanced as strongly, or would we be blind to the lessons written in blood? So, would skipping World War II create a golden age of peace or a dangerous world that never learned from its darkest mistakes? If you could rewrite history, would you erase World War II? Let me know in the comments. Hit like if this made you think and subscribe for more what-if journeys into alternate timelines. And now let's dive into the World War II timeline. First up, the Treaty of Versailles. In our timeline, the brutal peace treaty foisted on Germany after World War I included massive territorial losses, crippling financial penalties, and strict military limitations. This humiliation festered in Germany, creating fertile ground for extremism and resentment. Hitler exploited this discontent, promising to restore German pride and power. By 1933, he was in power and began rearming Germany, violating the treaty. This expansionism alarmed European powers who had hoped for a lasting peace. France and Britain, eager to avoid another conflict, took a surprisingly hands-off approach at first. They hoped that by allowing Hitler to annex Austria and Czechoslovakia, they could appease him and prevent a larger war. But this only emboldened Hitler further. In our timeline, in 1939, Hitler's forces swept through Poland with incredible speed, catching the Allies off guard. This blitzkrieg tactic caught the Allies off guard and forced them to reevaluate their strategy. Britain and France were obligated to help defend Poland under their treaty obligations. Within days, they declared war on Germany, beginning the most catastrophic conflict in human history. But what if instead of war, there was diplomacy? What if Hitler's neighbors had found a way to peacefully resolve their differences? In the absence of war, we imagine a Europe where Hitler consolidates power in Germany but faces resistance elsewhere. His plans for expansion are halted, not by tanks and bullets, but by determined diplomacy and strong alliances. With no immediate threat of invasion, Western Europe enters a period of stability and economic recovery. Perhaps the Marshall Plan, initially designed to rebuild Europe after the devastation of World War II, is used instead to stimulate growth across the continent, fostering greater cooperation and interdependence among nations. The focus shifts to peaceful means of conflict resolution, fostering closer ties between European nations. The European Union in this alternate timeline becomes a much more powerful and influential entity, potentially shaping global politics in ways we cannot predict. But while diplomacy prevails in Europe, the shadow of war looms elsewhere. Japan, driven by its own imperial ambitions, embarks on a path of expansion in Asia. This could lead to conflicts with China and other regional powers. However, without the distraction of a European conflict, The United States is in a better position to contain Japanese aggression, perhaps with a stronger U.S. presence in the Pacific. This could lead to a more protracted conflict, but one that might end in a decisive American victory. The outcome of this conflict would have significant implications for East Asia, potentially redrawing the map of the region and altering its political dynamics for decades to come. Now shifting to the ideological battleground, the absence of World War II could have profound implications for the future of communism. With no massive global conflict to galvanize support for communism, the appeal of this ideology might have waned, leading to its decline rather than its rise. In this alternate timeline, the Soviet Union might have continued to isolate itself, cut off from the rest of Europe, unable to spread its influence. Mao Zedong's communist revolution in China could have been less impactful without the support of an ideologically aligned Soviet Union. This could have led to a very different political trajectory for China, potentially opening it up to greater foreign influence or perhaps even fragmentation along ideological lines. The global balance of power would be significantly altered. Without the Cold War rivalry, the United States might have focused more on domestic issues, perhaps experiencing a different kind of cultural and social upheaval during the latter half of the 20th century. Without the threat of mutually assured destruction hanging over the world, the latter part of the century could have been shaped by different conflicts and crises. And then, there's the question of technology. World War II was a crucible for innovation, forcing nations to rapidly develop new technologies to gain the upper hand. The development of radar, jet engines, nuclear weapons, and sophisticated codes and ciphers all came out of this era. Without the war, many of these innovations might have come much later. For example, the space race, which dominated the latter half of the 20th century, might have been delayed by decades. The lack of wartime urgency could have slowed down advancements in rocketry, satellite technology, and materials science. Similarly, the development of computers and the internet might have followed a different trajectory. During World War II, the British and Germans engaged in a race to develop the most advanced code-breaking machines. This competition spurred significant advancements in electronics and programming, laying some of the groundwork for modern computing. Without the war, it's possible that these developments could have come much later, transforming the nature of communication and information access for decades. Additionally, the medical innovations born out of wartime necessity, such as new antibiotics, vaccines, and surgical techniques, might have also been delayed. Advancements in prosthetics and artificial limbs could have also been slowed down, impacting the quality of life for countless individuals. But perhaps the most profound impact of skipping World War II would be the absence of the Holocaust. The systematic, state-sponsored persecution and murder of European Jews by the Nazis remains one of the darkest chapters in human history. To imagine a world without the Holocaust is to confront a painful what-if scenario. If the horrors of the Holocaust never occurred, the Jewish diaspora might have looked very different. European Jewry, which had faced centuries of persecution, might have found a greater sense of security and belonging within their homelands. Israel, which was established in part as a refuge for Jews fleeing persecution, might have come into existence under different circumstances. The nation's identity and purpose could have been shaped by a vastly different set of circumstances. Beyond the Jewish diaspora, the absence of the Holocaust would have profound implications for our collective memory and understanding of human rights. The lessons learned from the genocide, the importance of tolerance, the dangers of unchecked nationalism, and the need for swift international action against persecution might have been harder won or perhaps never learned at all. It could be argued that the horrors of the Holocaust served as a touchstone for the latter half of the 20th century, shaping international law, human rights organizations, and global attitudes towards genocide. Without it, the world might have been slower to respond to subsequent atrocities and conflicts in places like Rwanda and the Congo. In essence, skipping World War II creates a ripple effect that changes not just major events, but the very fabric of society, technology, and human understanding. While it's tempting to imagine a world untouched by the horrors of war, it's important to recognize that this period also brought about significant advancements and lessons that shaped our modern world. The war's impact on technology, geopolitics, and our understanding of human rights are just as profound as its devastating losses. As we ponder this alternate timeline, we're reminded of the complexity of history and the unintended consequences of even the most horrific events. So once again, I ask you, if you could rewrite history, would you erase World War II? Let me know in the comments. Hit like if this made you think and subscribe for more What If journeys into alternate timelines.